Hey, ioStux here. In case you didn't know, on top of offering Overwatch and Valorant sessions, I now also offer aim coaching, mental coaching, and coaching for coaches. So no matter what game you play, you can now get professional help to significantly improve aspects of your play. Reception of these new coaching services has been absolutely stellar, and I'm booked out for weeks. And if you want to see the massive results my other clients have, check out ioStux.com to book your first session today.
What I'm doing wrong and what I can improve on. And then I actually personally know one of your mods, Carb.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he and I were part of Pug Group together, and he suggested you, and I was like, man, I really should probably do this. I play this game so much that I just want to get better, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting anywhere on my own at this point.
Okay. I mean, what I can. So the way these sessions work, right, is obviously I cannot guarantee that you'll get better, right?
Right.
That's unfortunately not. I wish I could do it, but I can't do that. What I can 100% guarantee, however, without a shadow of a doubt, is once we are done today, you are going to know with 100% confidence exactly what steps you would have to take in order to get significantly better to whatever point. And then once you know that, ultimately it just comes down to whether you are willing to do those things or not, right? And the reason I'm saying this is because there are sessions every once in a while where in order to improve, people might need to change the way that they play the game. They might need to play more, or maybe they need to warm up more, or they need to review more, or maybe they need to change something about their hero pool, or maybe they need to communicate more, or they need to communicate less, or they need to play on a team, or they need to leave a team, right? So there's a lot of things that go into improving, and sometimes you might need to weigh which option is better for your own personal improvement and which one is better for your own personal enjoyment of the game. It's kind of like deciding whether you should eat a 3-pound lasagna or go to the gym, where sometimes certain things are more fun in the short term and other things are more fun in the long term. Right, so just so that we're on the same page there, and just so that you know what you can expect out of today. Now, if at any point you have any questions, you can always. I'm just going to keep talking, right? But if you have any questions, you can just interrupt me at any moment in time. We have more than enough time. So normally, when someone gets a session, they actually need to fill out a form. I, however, am incompetent. Because as I said, you're the first person who got an emergency session, and apparently emergency session customers don't get the form, which doesn't really matter. It just means that I'm just going to ask you the questions now, and you'll just have to give me the answers on the spot. Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
So the first one is, what's your sense? Your sensitivity?
My sensitivity is, I believe it's 4.5, and at 1,200 DPI, I think.
You sound a little shaky on the 1,200. Is it 1,200 or 12,000? That's a big
Oh,
difference.
12. Not EDB. It's 1,200. I'm just trying to remember if my mouse's 1,200. If it was set on 1,200 or if it was set on like 24. I'm pretty positive it's set on 1,200 and the in-game sense of 4.5.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, as long as it's a general rule of thumb, if you multiply your sensitivity with your DPI, as long as that number is anywhere between 2,000 and 10,000, you are going to be perfectly fine as a DPS player, at least. Number 2, what rating are you currently at?
On DPS, I am right about 1,500.
Okay. Why did you specify DPS?
I've had success on tank, and on console at least I peaked about 2,900, and I just recently been having way more fun on DPS and support. But I'm still having issues on support, but my role that I'm having the most trouble with is DPS, and it's the most fun role I'm having as well. So I just want to get back to actually like improving what I can on that instead of like focusing somewhere else.
So are you currently like monogamous with DPS? Like, is it the only role you play?
No, I play all the roles. I just flex around playing. When I play with friends, it depends on what we have and what everybody's ratings are at the time.
Okay.
A lot of times I'll play DPS, but I'll bump onto tank or support whenever I'm playing with others. Or if I'm in pugs, I'm in a pug group. I typically just do the all roles wherever I fall. I end up getting to.
Okay. So, how many hours do you put into the game each week?
Probably around 10 to 12, I would say. It's not all at once either. It's usually um, if I'm home, that is, because I've been traveling a lot for work. But if I'm home, which is going to be the most norm, it's about 2 hours ish a night. And
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes a little bit more on the weekends, but typically it's about 2 hours a night. And then occasionally I'll miss a day here and there, but it's roughly that.
So um, how often do you have days where you cannot play at all?
Mm, I would say I would say it's pretty few and far between. I'll maybe miss in a month span. I'll probably not play 3 or 4 days. I usually get at least an hour or two in each night. It's kind of like my unwind at the end of the evening time after my son goes to bed. My wife
Mm-hmm.
is upstairs reading her book.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, why are you. Okay, that's a bit weird way to phrase it. I was about to say, why are you here? To get coached. No, why do you want to improve? And
I
how far do you want to go in terms of improvement?
I want to improve because I put a lot of time into the game, playing it and watching content on like YouTube and streamers, and I watch Overwatch League, and I just really enjoy the game, and it's a lot more fun when you're winning.
So, the reason you want to improve is to win more.
Yeah,
Can you think of why that thinking is fallacious?
because it's going to be. I would say that there's going to be there's going to be a storm that I have to weather before I start actually seeing wins come out. If I improve, it might be rough for a while I'm relearning things because I'm sure
Mm,
I've been playing for so long. I know I've developed bad habits and I just don't know what they are. I really want help in finding out what they are so I can actually break them.
yes, so that's the improvement perspective. What I mean is in Overwatch, what happens if you win?
Your SR based.
Okay. And what is SR? What does that do exactly? What are the consequences of your SR rising?
Play against better players.
Okay. And what's the point behind that? Why would the game make you face better opponents as you gain SR?
To keep the game balanced, I think.
And how is balance defined? How can you tell whether a ranked system is successful or not?
I don't know.
So the point behind a ranked system, or the way that it's usually called is matchmaking, the point behind matchmaking is to find players to fill a lobby, right? So in the case of Overwatch, to find 12 players and to distribute them on both teams with a very specific goal in mind. What is the goal of the matchmaker?
I'm actually not sure. That's a good question. I've never thought of that.
Okay. So when you design a game, you want to avoid situations where players either feel frustrated with the fact that they keep losing, or where players feel bored with the fact that they keep winning, right? Because back then, in the olden days, the way that most online shooters worked is you just had a server browser and you joined a server, and then you would have like a bunch of newbies who couldn't really do anything, and you had the veterans that just killed everyone, right? And that didn't exactly make for a great experience, right? Because people would play the game and then they would get bored of it very quickly. And with the way that games are designed nowadays, in order to become financially viable, you can't just have people buy the game, play it for a week, and then quit. You need people to play continuously. That's why Overwatch is getting content updates and stuff like that. So that's why matchmaking.
It's designed for you to win half of your game.
Exactly. Because the only way, the best outcome is if everyone has as many wins as they have losses, right? Their marketing department figured out that's the best way. If people ideally alternate between wins and losses, that's how they're going to play the game for the most time. And I mean, it makes sense, right? So that's the point behind matchmaking. That's the point behind a ranked system. Now, the reason why that is a problem here is because the goal that you have is the goal that most people have. The reason you want to get better is because right now you are losing games, and that's very frustrating, right? You want to win more. And again, back in the olden days when you played, CS 1.5 or 1.6 or whatever, that is something you could do. You would start playing those lobbies and you would belong to the bad players. But eventually, as you improved, your KD got higher and higher. The best modern example of this, actually, are the Call of Duty games before Modern Warfare. That's when they introduced skill-based matchmaking to the dismay of most of their player base. But before in Call of Duty, you would just be put into a random lobby. And that's why you would see those videos of people going 40-0 and getting multiple nukes and whatever in Call of Duty.
So they were stomping easy players.
Exactly, because they are just so much superior in skill. Because a lot of people don't truly grasp the difference between an experienced player and an average player. It just becomes ludicrous what they can do. It almost turns into a bot match, essentially. Unfortunately, you can't do that in Overwatch. The only thing that improving will do for you is you are going to play with and against better players, and your career profile is going to have a higher SR number on it, which, by the way, might not even be something that you want, because after a certain point, you might not even be able to play with your friends anymore, right? So the only reason why someone would want to get better is because they want to be able to play with and against more skilled opponents, or because they simply enjoy the process of becoming more knowledgeable about the game and becoming better at the game. But what you can't expect, because that's only going to lead to disappointment, is you cannot expect to be able to win any more games. If anything, the game tends to become more stressful as you get to higher ratings, from my experience. Which is offset by the fact that people at that level usually enjoy the game a lot, so they don't really mind the fact that it's very stressful, because at that point you're almost exclusively tryharding. So if you think about being able to just play with your friends, maybe try out a weird Bastion or Symmetra strategy, talking with each other, having fun, the game at a higher level simply doesn't really work that way anymore. You won't really be able to play with your friends unless you got a second account and you just started boosting them, which obviously, generally speaking, that's also not very fun for them if you just kill everything. So the reason why I'm saying all of this is because not just for Overwatch specifically, but for any goal in life in general, if you don't truly understand what you're actually going to get at the end of the road, it's going to be very difficult to be motivated, right? Because you're going to get better, and this is something that happens a lot with these sessions, right? So they get a coaching session, I tell them how the game works, they implement it, and they start improving. But now that they understand the game better, it actually gives them the ability to both see their own mistakes and the mistakes of their teammates with that much more clarity, which can also in its own way be stressful and frustrating, right? And I'm not trying to say that getting high elo sucks, like obviously it's great to be to improve and see yourself become smarter and perform better in the game, but that in of itself needs to be satisfaction enough, if that makes sense.
The grind needs to be the motivator, not the end goal.
Exactly. Okay. Because if, for example, let's say we have this session, okay, and we're going to go over the VOD later, and I tell you that you need to work on a specific part of your gameplay. Let's say you play McCree, and I tell you that you need to focus on your flashbang usage. That usually tends to be a problem for people. And then you go into ranked, and for a week, you start working on it. And then after the week, you send me over a replay code and you ask me, hey, Stux, how is this looking? Right? And then I tell you, yeah, this is looking much better. I feel like you can start working on this other thing that we talked about next. And if that loop, get feedback, work on it, see improvement, if that alone does not satisfy you, then you shouldn't really try to improve, because it doesn't get any more exciting than that, if that makes sense. If you don't get a sense of fulfillment from that process now, from the small things, it's not going to happen later. Because a big issue for a lot of people is that they play in low elo, and I'm not saying that you do this, right? But this is just this is what most people do. They play in lower ranks, and they feel like their teammates are very, very bad. They don't really play the Overwatch that they want to play, where it becomes coordinated and with teamwork and all of that stuff, right? And they think, or they hope at least, that when they reach a higher rating, the game is going to become more fun for them. They basically say, every single day they play 3 hours of Overwatch, and after those 3 hours, they regret having put in those 3 hours. They wish that they would have spent that time on something else. But they think that if once they reach high elo, the game is going to be fun again. But the reality is that if you don't find the game fun or fulfilling, at your current level, nothing is going to change at a higher rating. Okay?
That makes a ton of sense. Because like I said before, I've watched a ton of content, and I've definitely gone through processes of improving especially back when I played a lot of console, and it was a blast. Learning new things, because I mained Reinhardt at the time, and I learned a bunch of new techs, and I was trying them out in game, and I was having fun learning those new things. And I've kind of exhausted everything that YouTube has to give me at this point. I think I've seen every video you've got on there at least twice, and I'm also thinking I'm having problems. I know it. I've seen the content, but I have a hard time putting that into practice again. Yes. I just kind of get in game and potato.
Which brings us to the next two big things we need to talk about. Okay, so this was all just expose. Now we need to talk about the big things. So the first thing you just mentioned is that you invest a lot of time into consuming educational content, right? Obviously, I appreciate it. It's great to see that people watch it. The problem, however, is so we need to be pragmatic here. Okay, why do people like I or Game Leap or any guide channel on YouTube, why do we upload educational content? Be super pragmatic.
For views, money, I guess.
For views, exactly. So when we start out, right? When I started out, the reason I did it is, it was kind of a joke with a friend, right? But I did it because I felt like, hey, I can help out a lot of people, very, very wholesome. But the thing is that the reality is that eventually you start to grow older, and all of a sudden you need to think about your future, and all of a sudden you can't really justify putting in that amount of time to make educational content if it doesn't really draw on a wide audience, right? And if you look at Bronze to Owl, that series was very successful. The 3 episodes I made, they got a lot of views. Whereas a lot of other videos I made before, I think in terms of like maybe the production quality wasn't as good, but like in terms of content, in terms of raw educational value, I actually don't think that Bronze to Owl is even the best that I've made. I actually think there are other more niche videos that have much more important messages being shared. But obviously those don't get the views. So what it comes down to is that educational content on the internet, for the sake of ad revenue and exposure and whatever, is designed for a target demographic that is most likely to look for that sort of content in the first place. And the type of person, so in case you're interested, the skill rating at which the most people are that watch educational content is high platinum to low diamond. So right around the 3,000 range. That's where, if you go lower than that, people just start getting kind of casual. So the reality is that most people around your skill level, for example, they like playing Overwatch for fun, but they wouldn't go out of their way to watch a video about space control and ult economy,
Yeah.
And if you go higher than that, once you start getting into the masters category, that's when people usually feel like they've grown out of educational content, right? But like high plat to low diamond, that's when people really want to watch those guides, which means that when we make educational content, it is designed with that specific demographic in mind. And the problem is that when you make a guide, you don't want to make it so convoluted and niche and specific that people are going to look at it and feel like, nah, this isn't interesting for me. This is just some small tip. I want to learn the big stuff that's going to give me like 1,000 SR. But you don't want to make it too basic to where people see the title and they think, oh, this video is about using high ground. I already know that, So you need to find that middle ground where it's easy enough to where people can implement it and feel motivated to do so, but not too difficult so that people are like, I really can't be bothered with this.
Okay.
What this all boils down to, and like this sounds harsh, but educational content is not designed for a player of your skill level. And without having the necessary prerequisites and fundamental skills that a low diamond player has, the problem is that when you watch guide, it is very easy to identify yourself with the subject of the guide. So if I upload one of my coaching sessions, and you watch that coaching session, and I tell the player in the session that ultimate usage is a big problem, and I point out all of the issues with their ultimates, then you might be inclined to open up a replay of your own and see if your ult usage is good, or maybe you exhibit the same issues that the player in that YouTube video did. And because you have this, I don't know what the mental fallacy is called, like confirmation bias or something, you basically go into it looking for what you want to find, right? And then you're going to look at your gameplay, and you're only going to be looking at like ultimate usage or whatever, and you're going to be like, hey, apparently this is a big issue for me as well. But in reality, you go into that review very biased, and potentially the real big issue for you is not ult usage, but ability usage, or maybe you simply don't even pick the right character, or maybe you don't strafe well enough. And then that can lead you down a road, because the problem is once you have your sights set on a specific issue, it is very difficult to change course, because in Overwatch it is one of the easiest games to misinterpret. Like you can send the same team fight to like 10 different players and ask them, what should this player have done differently? And they will all give you 10 equally valid answers on something that player could have done differently. But the only way you can actually find out what the player should set as their overall goal, you need to look at a lot of fights and a lot of games in order to start seeing patterns on what is costing you more team fights than the other things, right? But you might watch that guide, and then you might focus on a particular issue that is an issue, but that might prevent you from, it's like a quote, I don't know if it exists in English, like you can't see the forest in front of the trees or something. You just don't really have that you kind of start to tunnel vision on a specific thing.
So it's kind of like you're tunneling on a minor issue, and you're not seeing all the big issues that you're actually
exactly, because it's very different. Overwatch is a game where it's very easy to misinterpret small issues as big issues. The classical example of this is actually aim. So, I mean, okay, so this is a bit weird because you are in silver, so there is actually a very good likelihood that aim is an issue. But let's say someone in diamond, for example, diamond players are notorious for underestimating their aim, their mechanical capability. And you can look at basically every single team fight and then tell yourself, had I landed this particular shot, we would have won this team fight. And you can do that with basically every single team fight. And so a lot of diamond players, they fall into the trap of looking at each team fight, thinking that had they landed one more shot, they would have won the team fight, and then just focusing on aim, not realizing that there is another issue that is significantly easier to fix and yields significantly more consistent results. Does all of that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh shit!
Essentially, what?
No, sorry, I accidentally opened up a program. Keep going.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It's more along the line, and that's kind of something I was mentioning to some other people that I was talking to in one of the plug groups. I was saying that I mentioned that what I want to improve on isn't necessarily aim. I kind of feel like my aim's all right, but I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm putting myself in a situation. Am I putting myself in a situation that's making things harder on me? What am I doing in those situations? I've never really looked at aim being a big thing, especially because, like I said, when I was on console, I would play tank all the time, so aim's not really a big thing, especially not with Ryan. But and then when I moved to PC, aiming with a mouse was just so much easier, and my setup was pretty decent. I never felt like I was missing too many shots, I guess. It's obviously there's room to improve on mechanics, but I thought I was pretty positive that my mechanics were not why I'm in freefall.
Okay.
But I don't know what is.
Yeah, and that's kind of the issue, right? Because obviously the first I guess suspicion that I would have is because this is like a very it's kind of shaping up too nicely. You are a higher rank on tank, a slightly lower rank on support, and then super low rank in DPS. And obviously those three roles in that exact order are also in terms of like mechanical requirement. Right? And then also your playtime, right? So you say that you can, on a good week, you can play maybe 2 hours each day. That is in... So obviously you're not a kid, like you have a family, you have like a decent job, right? The reality is that especially with COVID, the average player that you face in Overwatch ranked is a teenager who doesn't even need to walk to school anymore, which means that right now people have a lot of time to play the game. So the time requirement is even higher than it normally would be. Okay, and that's a little bit of a problem. Because if mechanics is actually an issue, if we're going to look at the gameplay, and if it turns out that your mechanics are what's holding you back, then the only solution to that would be to either say, okay, I don't exactly have the time to work on to make my mechanics any better. So you would need to think about just focusing on a different role. Or you say, maybe I need to put in like an extra hour a day to get my mechanics up to par, right? So those are basically the only two options. Outside of that, the only thing we can do is like make sure that your play time is as focused as possible. So if I recall correctly, earlier you mentioned that which role you play depends on like kind of the day, depends on the people that you play with. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be pretty accurate. If I'm playing by myself though, I almost always either DPS or support. But when I play support, I pretty much only play Ana, Bap, or Sand.
Yeah, and like that's kind of the problem, Because if mechanics are actually like an issue, then those are basically the options. No. And the thing is that like you need to.
The issue, like I'm totally like if that is the issue, and my other problems aren't. If I find out that my mechanics are the issue, that's honestly the point that I kind of want to get to. I want to get to the point where my mechanics are the thing that holds me back, and the only way to fix that is time. It's time invested in my mechanic. And that is literally it. There's not like I want to know that there's nothing else that I'm doing wrong other than my aim is shit. If that's the case, if my game's shit, my aim's shit. Cool. That I know how to fix that. Like, but the other things that I don't really have a good grasp on, is I don't know how to fix other things. I guess.
Okay. Then let me see. What do we have? Okay. So I guess besides watching YouTube videos, what have you been doing so far to improve? Outside of just playing the game, of course.
Obviously playing the game, but when I do play on the computer, I do warm up typically. I just saw this one thing where I'll do weird like warm up things that make it so that it's your blood's flowing better in your hands or whatever the whole spiel that they like to put out there. But I always try to warm up if I'm playing anything that requires mechanic. I have tried watching my own VODs back, but I get so lost when I'm watching them. I just don't know really what to look for or what I should be content. Like what should I be looking at? Like, oh, okay, I died here. Why did I die? I got jumped on by a doomfist. I don't know what I do better there.
Well, let's talk about that then. So, what is a VOD review? Like, how do you define that?
Just watching your gameplay back and trying to find mistakes in your game that you can correct, I suppose.
Okay, so what's the difference between a review and an analysis then?
Oh, I don't even know. I don't know what an analysis will be then. If that's my definition of a VOD review, then I don't know what a VOD analysis would even be.
Exactly, because what you just described is not a review; it's an analysis.
Okay.
So when you analyze something, right? You try to look for the details. You ponder. You try to explain something.
Yeah.
Right? When you analyze a team fight, it means, why did we lose this? What other options did we have? How could those different options have led to different outcomes? That's an analysis, when you're asking yourselves questions. A review is exactly what it says it is. You just review the game. You just watch it back again. Okay? And it is, because here's the thing. You cannot analyze your own gameplay. Because what analysis is you using past experience in order to interpret something. So for example, if I've watched a lot of gameplay, and when I watch your gameplay, when I analyze your gameplay, then I can draw upon the previous experience, right? And compare that to your gameplay and then draw conclusions off of that. You know, I can say that in general, when all of the high-level McCree players I've seen, right, that experience leads me to believe that all of those players would not have taken this particular position, but instead positioned more aggressively, you know? And then I can also use experience in order to come up with the reasoning, right? The reason that they do this is because they want to be in flashbang range or something like that. And then I can tell you that, right? I can tell you right there, you're playing too far back. You need to play more aggressively so you can go into flashbang range, right? So that's the point behind an analysis. I've analyzed the issue. I've come up with a solution. When you review, you cannot really do that on your own because you don't have that previous experience to fall back on. You cannot look at a team fight and then ask yourself, what would a high-level player have done here? Because you don't know.
Because I'm not a high-level player.
Exactly. So the only thing you can do when you review something it is a research process of sort, right? So if you think about the way that scientists do research, okay, they build a huge ass particle accelerator. They have some theories, they have some idea, right? And they just start smashing particles against each other without any expectation, without reading into anything. They just smash them together, and then they just see at face value what they get. Okay? They don't presume to understand what the fuck is actually going on. All they see is, okay, if we smash them together, then 10% of the time we get this other particle. Okay? That's a fact. And now we need to come up with a theory as to what the fuck this is all supposed to mean. And ultimately, that's what you're doing when you're reviewing a game. You just look at each team fight, right? So each team fight is like two particles slamming together. And then you have an outcome. And some team fights, you win, and some of them you lose, right? It's like when you slam the two particles together, sometimes maybe you get an electron, sometimes you get a positron. I don't fucking know. But you don't really know why. It seems like you're doing the same thing, yet you're getting different outcomes. Okay, so the only thing you can do is you can keep smashing particles together and reviewing that until you start to see patterns, right? Because at the start, when they smash those particles together, the numbers just look like random numbers, and they don't exactly know what correlates with which or what causes what. But they are literally slamming like billions of particles every day together, and they have so much fucking data. And they look at it, and then they can like see like small patterns, like, hey, this number is like above 1 51% of the time, and below 1 49% of the time. Right. Maybe that means something. Maybe this is kind of this correlates to the results we're getting. And that's what you do when you review your games. You look at the team fights, and you see whether you get value or whether you don't. Let's say you play Ash, and you want to figure out how to get more value out of your bobs. You can't just open a replay code, look at a team fight where your bob didn't get any value, and then stare at your screen for 40 minutes asking yourself what you could have done differently, because you don't have the experience to do that. All you can do is you can keep looking at your bobs, bob after bob after bob after bob, right? So let's do the math here. Let's say you can set aside 1 hour for review. Obviously, that's a lot given your current schedule, but let's just say 1 hour. During that hour, you can review, let's say each game lasts 20 minutes, right? You can review 3 games. Okay, and a 20-minute game, let's say that during that 20-minute game, during each game, there's, let's say like 15 team fights, okay? 15 team fights, so you watch 45 team fights a day. So that's like, I don't fucking know, like 280 team fights a week. Okay, whatever, the numbers don't even matter. Almost 300 team fights that you watch each time. Okay, obviously you don't have your ultimate during all of them, but let's say a decent Ashe player should get their ultimate every other fight. Okay, so you have like 150 bobs that you reviewed, that you looked at in the week. And some of them got a lot of value. They just killed like 4 people. Some of them got some value. Some of them got no value. And some of them you just threw off the map, right? And if you look at them individually, you have no idea where to even begin. But after just 1 week of reviewing, you have 150 bobs in your head. And you maybe start to notice, like, every single time I used my bob when the Reinhardt shield was down, I got a lot more value. Or maybe my bobs seem to get more value against this particular team comp. Or maybe they get more value when I use them behind the enemy team or to the side, or maybe if I throw it directly against the tank, right? And you can start coming up with a theory based on those patterns, right? The majority of the time, when X happens, Y happens. And you don't know yet if X is actually causing Y, or maybe it's just a lucky correlation. But now you have a hypothesis. Apparently X seems to cause Y. Apparently, if I let the Reinhardt shield break first, then my bobs are better, right? I want to test this hypothesis. So now for the following week, you try to explicitly focus on testing that hypothesis. Before you use your ultimate, you just focus on shield break, and then once the shield breaks, you throw your bob in. And then you see, okay, during the second week, you're going to look at 150 bobs again at the end of the second week. And now you have the experience from the previous week. right? And maybe in the previous week, 30% of your bobs got value, but now 70% of them got value. And again, it could just be random chance.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not. Maybe
Yeah.
your hypothesis, maybe there seems to be some truth to it, right? And then you can just let that sit for now and say, okay, I seem to be onto something. And you haven't perfected it, right? There's so much that goes into whether a bob is going to get value or not. But you've come closer to the truth than you were before, to what goes into whether a bob is good or not. And a lot of that knowledge is not even specific. So for example, we just talked about bob, and you might think, okay, so I just spent 2 weeks improving my bob usage, but there's so much to this game. If I keep going at this pace, it's going to take me 3 years to actually get good at the game because I need to go over everything at once. But in the same way that when when people look at physics, and they come up with like quantum theory or some shit, it's not like they need to just study quantum theory because it builds on a lot of previous knowledge. So when you learn about how to use bob properly, right? Maybe you can utilize that knowledge to learn how to use other ultimates more effectively as well, right?
Okay,
maybe you also play soldier and you're like, you know what? Maybe I should also on soldier break the Reinhardt shield before ulting, right? And you kind of have a head start. You kind of know what direction to smell in,
Right. So they all build on each other. And it makes it so that the improvement across separate characters kind of overlaps.
Exactly. Yes. And that's the way that ultimately you get better at the game. Not by sitting down like twice a week and just watching one game for an hour. And that way, like what you review like 6 team fights a week. That's not enough. It's impossible to see any patterns that way. But again, if you just try to get as many team fights in as possible, you will start to see patterns, right? You will notice the majority of my team fights are lost because I die too early, or because my ultimate doesn't get value, or it kind of seems like the enemy Ana just lands more nades than me, or there's like a billion things that could be, but only through quantity can you actually begin the process of pattern recognition.
Well, essentially, I need to review a lot of games of mine, and then build a hypothesis by, like with a week's worth of samples, build a hypothesis on that, then go back in the next week and test that hypothesis for a week to get myself an equal data pool to pull off of and find out if that actually was a thing that if my hypothesis was correct or incorrect. In either way, I'll either know that does help me get more value, or I will know for certain that does not help me get more value.
Exactly, right? It's again, like with the science analogies, sometimes people, like you see it in the news, these guys spent $3 billion on an experiment, and it has proven that their theory was incorrect. And then people see that headline and they think to themselves, wow, they just wasted so much money just to learn that they were wrong. But like, there is no such thing as like bad learning or bad information, even when it is exactly just learning, like, hey, I thought the game worked this way, but it doesn't. You're cutting one option off the list. If anything, that's what you want. You want to be put into situations where your existing beliefs don't line up with the results that you're seeing. Maybe you think, right, this is okay, so I'm going to give you like a practical example, because this is something that happens to so many players. A lot of players watch YouTube guides, and one thing that gets talked about very often for DPS players is that people need to flank more. As McCree, try to look for flanks, try to look for off angles, that way you can get picks and you can carry your games. So a lot of people do that. They go into their games and they try to go for these off angles and these flanks and whatever. But if you actually review the gameplay, you're going to very quickly figure out that whenever you go for a flank, you're going to probably lose the team fight, like 80% of the time, right? And that doesn't really line up because the guy told you to do it. But by doing the review, you're going to recognize, like, hey, I seem to win more team fights when I don't go on a flank. What's up with that? Right? And then you need to figure out which causes which. Maybe you just like to flank more when you think the team fight is when you're at a disadvantage anyways, right? That could be it. Or maybe the flank is what's causing the lost team fight and not the other way around. And then you can come up with a hypothesis. You can start thinking, or maybe you can even ask me. You can send me a message like, "Hey, Stux, I've been watching my games and I noticed that for some reason, even though everyone tells me to go on flanks, I just die." I just don't see why that would be useful. And then it could be that maybe you just don't execute the flank properly, right? Maybe some flanks work and maybe some flanks don't. And then you can ask yourself, okay, well, what do the good flanks have in common and what do the failed flanks have in common? But maybe you recognize that in reality, none of the flanks were really good. It's just that with some flanks, you got kind of carried and with others, you didn't get carried. But ultimately, none of the flanks grant you value. And then you can ask yourself, well, why is that, right? And to give you kind of the solution to this particular example, the problem is that whenever that a good flank requires two things. It requires a lot of independence, which means you need to have very good mechanics and situational awareness. Because whenever you're on a flank, you cannot really expect any resources from your supports, right? So if you're playing with a Baptiste or a Moira, for example, those two healers are at their best, at their most effective, when everyone just stacks up together. But if you decide to go on a flank, all of a sudden those characters simply aren't going to get a lot of value. So that's something to keep in mind. That's a hypothesis. Before I go on a flank, I should ask myself, are my healers really down for this?
Right.
Or am I, worst case, am I being a burden right now? Because in high elo, people, when they see someone on a flank, they very quickly realize whether they can heal that target or not. Right? Maybe they say, okay, this McCree is up there. I'm not even going to pay attention to him. But in low elo players, people get very panicky. They see that you're low HP, and you can bet your butthole that Mercy is going to fly halfway across the map to try and heal you.
Yeah.
And that sucks. Because she's going to die, whereas a high-level player would have just let you alone and done your flank, and then your team would have applied pressure,
Right.
So that's just one example, and I could literally do like a 2-hour video just talking about like common misconceptions or like the way that people misinterpret things that are technically true, but only under certain conditions. But ultimately, what it boils down for you, and the way that you need to think about this, is just that through pattern recognition, do we learn? Can we draw conclusions? Okay, we cannot just like be logical. Like logic does get you like a part of the way there, but you can't just figure out the entire game of Overwatch just through like logical deduction, unless you have like a lot of like ultimately a lot of things you're going to learn are at first going to be unlogical. They're going to be unintuitive to you. You're going to think that this makes zero sense. But only through experience do you actually start to maybe. And that's also one of the magical things about improvement. Very often when you review this game, results actually come before understanding. So a lot of people think that they need to watch a bunch of guides and they work on their understanding first. They try to learn a lot about the game and become really smart. To the point where they actually understand the game really well, but they still can't play it for shit. And that can lead to a lot of frustration because they seem to be very smart and they know what their issues are, but they simply cannot act upon them. But when you take this more, this less analytical and more experimental approach, what ends up happening is that very often one of your hypotheses proves itself to be true, right? Like with the Ashe example, with the Ashe ultimate, for example, exactly. But you might not actually understand why. You might observe that when you do X, Y is going to happen. But you can act upon that knowledge before you truly understand it. Okay, like if I start to clap my hands, maybe a beard is going to grow. Right? And maybe I really want a beard, So like I'm like, fuck yes, I can just clap my hands and I have a beard, So I can take advantage of that knowledge or of that thing that I've learned without even truly understanding. I don't fucking know why it leads to my beard growing. It's the same thing with Overwatch, and that's why, right? A lot of people are always like at a high level, these Overwatch League teams, like, why do these god tier players, these living legends, as they call them, why do they need coaches? Like, aren't they like super smart? I mean, most of these coaches in Overwatch League are like platinum. What's up with that? Why are these god tier legends being coached by plat players, right? And the reason for that is, with this thing that I've just told you, the majority of improvement, and you can ask any pro player, the majority of improvement simply comes from this works, this other thing doesn't work, I'm gonna do what works, without actually understanding why. Right? Because to a certain point,
and the coaches understand why.
Exactly, and that's the thing. So the coaches, the players play better, but there are very few players in Overwatch League, right? So an example of that would be Fusions. Like, he is big brain as heck. There are players who are really smart and they do understand like everything, but a lot of players, they can play very well, they can make the right decisions, but they cannot, if you ask them, why was this the objectively best play, they cannot give you an actual definitive answer. And that's where the coaches come in, because they cannot execute upon it, but they understand the game very well from a theoretical standpoint. So they both work together, because sometimes theory isn't very practical. That's where the players come in. Like a physicist could tell you, like, hey, if you have a nuclear reactor at home, you wouldn't have to pay for energy, which is like theoretically true. But then the fucking accountant comes in and is like, okay, but how are we going to pay for this? Because there's always two sides to every story. And so that's how they work together. But you need to be, when you're trying to improve, you don't need to try to be a coach. But a lot of people, the way that they approach improvement basically shows similarities with trying to become better coaches. When in reality, the process to becoming a better player is very, very, very different from the process to become a better coach. You do not need that in-depth understanding at first. You just need to know what works and what doesn't work. And the only way you can understand what works and what doesn't work is if you sit down and you watch a lot of freaking team fights until you start to notice patterns. And that's why it's called a VOD review and not analyzing yourself. It's reviewing yourself, not analyzing yourself. Because when you play the game, unless you play the game a lot, simply playing the game does not give you the same insight that a dedicated review would be, because Overwatch is not like League of Legends. In a game like League of Legends, you don't actually need to VOD review that much, because the game is rather slow paced and you have a lot of time after your deaths to kind of contemplate what happened. But for a fast paced game like Overwatch, you cannot do that in the slightest. It's going to be super, super overwhelming. So that's why you need to sit down and just review, have a dedicated review. And one thing that really helps with that is, or at least that's something that I did when right now I'm at a different university, but before I even started with Overwatch, I was studying at a university that was a little bit far away from the town that I grew up in. So I had a commute every single day of 1.5 hours, right? And what I would do back then, we didn't have a replay viewer, which means that we needed to record our VODs the old-fashioned way. And I would play in the evening, and I would record those VODs, and I would upload them to YouTube unlisted. And then I would, the next day, I could, so I don't know how it is in America, but like in Germany, we have Wi-Fi on the trains. I would go on the train and I would watch like literal 240p, because the Wi-Fi wasn't particularly good, 240p replays of the VODs, And the reason why I didn't just put them on the phone directly is because I wanted to like have them uploaded somewhere in case I want to rewatch them in the future. But yeah, the point being is, as I was on that train, I was watching that gameplay. So I reviewed my games. I didn't do it for the entire train ride. Like, obviously, eventually I just pulled out my phone and like played games or shit, I was like 17. But I was reviewing. So that's how I got like my hour a day of reviewing, commuting to university and then commuting back. And then that way I could review without it affecting my playtime. And that's something that you might be able to do as well. So if you think about your daily routine, it is very difficult to find the time to play a game. You need to sit down. You need to make sure that all of your other responsibilities are done. But sometimes there are those moments, like just think, today about all of the times where you just waited for something, or where you just checked your phone, or where you like basically procrastinate in some way. Like, obviously, like, it sounds a little bit weird, but I mean, what are you really doing when you're taking a poop? Like, I'm just saying,
that makes sense.
There's so much time really that people can use constructively, and ultimately it comes down to how serious, not how serious, but like how willing you, like how quickly you get burned out, rather, because obviously some people they don't want to watch Overwatch while they're on the toilet, only to play Overwatch once they're done with the toilet, But especially for people who aren't fucking 15 anymore and have a life, you always want to look for those small moments where you can just watch the first point defense of that Hanamura game that really frustrated you the previous day. Takes like 5 minutes, and you can take away something from it. And another reason why this is so good is for motivational purposes. So one of the worst things is actually going into the game with confidence, right? So some people, I guess a good way to explain this is actually in the context of a team. So when I was coaching professional teams, you cannot exactly decide when you want to play or not. Tournaments are coming, it's an active season. And sometimes you have very frustrating losses. You invest a lot of time preparing for a team that you're supposed to win against, and then just barely, maybe someone had an off day, maybe they just had a really good time, you barely lose, and then team morale is like very low. And one thing that's very important is that you cannot leave questions unanswered. You can really tell with the players that it frustrates them, not that they lost, but that they don't know what they should have done differently. Right, so the number one priority at that level is to just go over that game as quickly as you can and then give the players answers, because that's how you can turn it into motivation. So for you, a practical example is maybe you lost a game and you felt like you played really, really well. And that's why whenever someone gets one of these sessions, I always tell them the best replay code that you can bring to a session like this is a game where you thought you played well, but lost anyways. Because
I have one of those. I felt like I was just cracked and we lost.
Because when we go over that, right, and then I'm going to tell you about all of these very, very simple things you could have done differently. I'm going to tell you about all of these misconceptions that we've had about the game. What happens after that is you're going to feel a very, very strong sense of confidence and like excitement to implement that stuff. And that's what you want. Right, so if we go back earlier to the example, right, you're on your commute and you're watching that replay that you just put on your phone or upload it to YouTube as unlisted or whatever, and then you spot something. You start to recognize a pattern, like, hey, wait a second, like maybe what's up with that? And then you go over some older replays, it's like fucking what is it called? Like the two brothers that like solve crime or whatever, I don't know. And you feel like fucking Sherlock Holmes and Watson in one, and you get really excited. Like it like that feeling is very indescribable, because it feels like you've just discovered the secret to the universe. You're like, holy shit, I'm onto something here. And then you keep going over more and more replays, and watching those replays just like confirms your hypothesis. Like, according to my hypothesis, I should lose here. Okay, I lost. According to my hypothesis, I should win here. Okay, I won. And you keep going and you keep going, and you're like, holy shit, I think I figured this game out. And then like, I swear to God, you're gonna poop so fucking fast so you can get to your PC and like just start playing the game and like implement that stuff. And like that confidence, like that is a very, 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 very strong. Not confidence, like that motivation is like very, very strong and very, very important for improvement. And that's how you can, once you get that feeling for the first time, like I recall this very vividly. So when I was coaching Boston, like their academy team, we had a DPS player called Asking. And so we were in the team house in Canada. We were chilling in like a suburb of Toronto, like Norfolk or whatever it's called. Um, and it was like 3 a.m. Okay, we just lost the tournament game. Okay,
Yeah.
it was 3 a.m. I did look at the game, but generally speaking, I like looking at them in the morning after I've had some time to process things. And I shit you not, like at 3 in the morning, I just he like fucking asking, like he comes over, like so excited. Like I swear to God, like he looked like someone who just like I don't know, just like confessed his feelings to his crush, and then the person said, "I actually like you too." Like I swear to God, I've never seen a man this giddy, and he just kept talking about like, "Dude, I figured it all out," you know. I figured it out.
Yeah.
I looked at the game, dude. Like trust me, 100%. You know, like you need to come. It was fucking 3 a.m. You know, but like you can just see it in his eyes. You know, and he
Yeah.
is, no offense to him, he is not the kind of player who really likes reviewing games. He's never done it before, you know, but like for some reason, you know, I don't know what it was, but right there he just decided to do it, and like immediately he had that he like understood why reviewing is so strong. And all of this,
He had the aha moment.
exactly, all of this just comes from quantity over quality, which, again, as unintuitive as it sounds, reviewing 3 games in an hour is better than reviewing 1 game in an hour, because pattern recognition is the one intrinsic ability that every single human being has. Being able to recognize that when A happens, B tends to happen as well. Okay?
So when I'm reviewing my games, is how am I trying to say? Um, should I be like writing something down, like when like what you just said, when A happens, B tends to happen? Is there something that I should be like looking for? Like, should I be looking for that A thing, and then like responding to that, or should I just be watch it, and eventually I'll start to notice patterns.
So, generally speaking, you don't really need to write anything down,
Mhm.
but you look at the gameplay, and you're like these patterns are going to come to you like automatically, you know.
Okay.
Like you do need to kind of talk with yourself a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you need to be how do you, like, you're kind of talking to yourself and you're like, maybe it's that, or maybe it's that, or maybe it's that, or maybe it's that. But like it comes very naturally. Like it's one of those things that you like overthink really hard. Like, am I going to be able to spot it? Oh no, you know, maybe I'm too dumb for this. But like, trust me, it's just like it's super intuitive. Like it's going to be very, very obvious. And ultimately, it comes down to how many team fights you watch. Because with every single team fight that you watch, like the patterns are going to become more and more like sharp. You know, they're going to be like less blurry, I guess you could call it.
And should I watch from my perspective, my first person perspective,
Yes.
or should I? Okay, my first person perspective.
Ideally, you want to watch from the first person perspective. You can every once in a while go to a bird's eye view if you're like, you know, if you feel like you want to like check something very specific for some reason. Like the only time I would go to a bird's eye view is if you already have a hypothesis that you want to like check. You
Okay.
know, like if you think, maybe this is the cause, you know. But generally speaking, you want to avoid using bird's eye too much because it might lead you to utilize information that wasn't available to you in the moment of the game to draw a conclusion, right? And then you end up with this
Wow.
situation where you're like, oh, well, I just need to keep track of this, and then I can win very easily. But practically, keeping track of that from a first person perspective is not as easy as from a bird's eye perspective. So the only time bird's eye is really good is if you're looking for something specific, or if you are reviewing macro level stuff.
Okay. So while gaining the plethora of data that I need to make my hypothesis, I need to be pretty much exclusively in first person.
Exactly, because that's the only way you can really guarantee that you're like that the information that you're getting was actually available to you at
Right.
that moment in time. And then after that, once you have that information, then you can go into bird's eye if you want to like, see the grand scheme of things, or like to check the context. For example, when you're playing dive, right? Maybe you want to figure out why. Sometimes obviously you're playing DPS, right? But like as a tank player, sometimes you go in and stuff dies, and then sometimes it doesn't die, right? And you keep watching and you keep watching and you keep watching, and then maybe you recognize like after a while that, oh wait, like so far I've seen myself dive Zarya like 50 times, and not a single time did any of those dives actually lead to a kill, right? And then your hypothesis is like, maybe I shouldn't kill Zarya, So this is an example of something where like you don't even need bird's eye view, Like it comes very, very, and those are like the easy things to act upon. But when you go into bird's eye view, then you might focus too much on like, oh, my teammates are like in this position and I need to do that and they need to do this. And it's like, and you get very excited, to implement that.
Yeah.
But then you're like in game, right? And that's why even like when I was coaching a team, like sometimes, like I can't just, I needed to like spectate players specifically, because maybe something seemed very trivial from the bird's eye perspective. But then when I went down to their level, like their perspective, I'm like, okay, yeah, like it seems very obvious from a bird's eye view, but I can't really expect my players to keep track of that from like a first person view. It's way too chaotic. There has to be an easier way for us to get more value here.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay. Perfect. Well, we've just spent like a lot of time talking, which I can tell from my throat slowly starting to give up.
Starting to go.
So, do you have any questions?
Not particularly right now. I definitely have gotten a lot from understanding actually VOD reviewing, and I'm starting to honestly have to feel that excitement now to just I want to go get myself some data so that I can start watching.
Yeah.
But no, not really, not right now.
Then give me some gameplay.
Okay, I have a replay code here. Are you ready for it?
Yep.
All right. 845.
Oh, Jesus Christ, you're okay. This is some fucking 1920 shit, like dictating it. Okay, 1 second. I need to like open my game. Okay. I am not. Now, most people just press like the copy button and then they paste it in Discord. Yeah, no, it's all good. It's just I was like, oh my god, I wasn't ready for this. What's going on? As of late, I'm really surprised. Like, I've been doing this for a while, right?
Yeah.
And I swear to God, for like the first few years, everyone would just copy it into Discord. But like these past few weeks, so many people, they just start like I don't know.
Off to you.
Yeah, it's insanity. But yeah, I am ready now.
845 GNA.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Who are you?
I am Blue Team Ash Senpai right now.
Oh my god, okay, 1 second. There's like this annoying peeping noise like throughout this entire session, and okay, 1 second, I need to see. What is this? Oh, no, okay, 1 second. I need to figure out what the heck this is because it's giving me like testicular cancer. No, I don't think it's you. No, I'm like doing some server side stuff, and I think that there's like a keybind that makes a really annoying loud sound. Okay, 1 second. I need to like close the game because otherwise I can't see shit. Okay, there we go. I don't know. I just closed everything. I don't like explicitly know what it does. Okay, hopefully no more annoying beeping noises every 5 minutes. There we go. Havana. You should be able to see the game again.
Yep.
Very good. Now, why would you call yourself senpai?
That's my friends back when I was playing back in high school. The joke happened that they started calling me senpai. So because we all watched anime forever, so it just kind of stuck.
Oh, I see. What's your favorite anime?
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, probably my number one.
I feel like I like it too. I feel like it dragged on like a tad too much. Like I feel like it could have been like 10 episodes shorter. I think it was over 70.
I would agree with that.
I think the arc where they were in like the icy area, like the Russian type area, I felt that was a bit too long.
Yeah, but, I think they could have shortened that up a little bit.
Yeah.
Or maybe just, they didn't really need that arc.
True. I do like Mirai Nikki, if you know it. That's my favorite anime. I've watched it like fucking 15 times or so.
What was it?
Mirai Nikki, The Future Diary is the English.
Future Diary. I've been meaning to watch it and I haven't.
It is absolutely excellent. It is by far my favorite. It is so good. It is so good. The only depressing part about it is that the OVA, like the post, like the epilogue basically, wasn't dubbed in English. And I watched it with the English dub because I was pretty young when I watched it first, so I didn't want to read subtitles. And I hate that because I'm so used to the English dubbed voices now. And then I watch the epilogue and the voices are like so high pitched, like, oh, come on, Asai.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a very good anime. I recommend it. Now let's actually look at some Overwatch gameplay. We need to stay focused here. It is really good though. I do 100%.
I will check it out.
Okay, so first things first. How should we move in a first-person shooter?
Be strafing back and forth, I would say.
Exactly.
Like AD.
Exactly. We're not really doing that here.
Gotcha. So I'm just kind of, I'm not moving at all.
Yes. Now the thing is, people at this rating cannot exactly aim very well, but when the target isn't moving, they don't need to be able to, right? So that's already, and now this is the thing, right? There are like multiple types of skill sets. There are things like aiming, landing your abilities, positioning, things that you can improve upon, but that are impossible to perfect. You cannot expect to always land every shot or always be in the right position or always land your ability and time it perfectly. But then there are things where you are, as an FPS player, you're expected to perfect them, right? Where every single time you fuck it up, it's like you basically could have not fucked it up. And those two things are like the two main things are strafing and crosshair placement. Those are the two things that need to be flawless throughout every single Overwatch game that you play. So strafing means that you should always move side to side, strafing, ideally around a corner, which is called peek shooting. Obviously, there are situations where you can deliberately stand still to maybe make a shot a little bit easier, but it needs to be very second nature to you to just strafe side to side. And then with the crosshair placement, that simply means keeping your crosshair at head height. Again, that is just something that is expected of you, because that way you just need to move your crosshair left or right. So you don't even need to worry about, going too far up or going too far down. It just gives you one less dimension that you can fuck up in, basically. Which again is just a prerequisite in order to be competitive at a high level. Okay, and you standing still here, this is like a dead giveaway. That is like a very dead giveaway of you not being a high level player. because not a single high level player, sometimes they fuck up their flashbang, sometimes they screw up their ultimate, sometimes they're caught out of position, sometimes they go on an unnecessary flank, sometimes they tunnel vision, sometimes they get greedy. Not a single high level player, and not even high level player, not a single player, diamond and above, would ever stand still for this period of time. With every single second that you stand still there, my guess of your elo decreases by like 500. You know, you stand still for 1 second, okay, he's platinum. You know, 2 seconds, he's gold. 3 seconds, okay, this guy is silver. If you know what I mean.
Right. I fired four full shots before I even moved there.
Yeah, this is some pretty dramatic standing stilliness, especially against an enemy Ashe.
Yeah.
But oh, you're landing some pretty good shots. Okay, you cannot hear this here because I am not sharing the sound. However, how would you rate your ability to listen for game sounds?
Honestly, it's probably not very good. I recognize the alt sounds, but like I get snuck up on a lot, I feel like.
Yeah, because
like
this
footsteps are weird to me. I don't really hear them. Like,
this right here is like an advertisement for noise cancelling headphones, so you don't get tinnitus. Like this right here is some when it happens. There we go. Like basically World War III was happening right next to you and you didn't hear it, right? And the thing is, so sometimes certain sounds are a bit difficult to tell. So for example, it's difficult to tell whether an enemy is like in front of you or behind you.
Yeah.
That can be pretty difficult. With practice, you can tell it.
Like I might have heard that, but I might have thought it was underneath me. I don't know if they're here though. This is like a week old.
Yeah, again, that's something that like comes with practice. You can actually get surprisingly good at like identifying where sounds are coming from. But whenever a sound is like directly to the left of you, that needs to be very, very apparent to you.
Okay.
Like, because you're the left side, you play with headphones, right?
Yes.
Good. The left side of your headphones here need to be exploding. What headphones do you use?
They're Astro 810s.
Oh no. Do they have... Astros are notorious for having like a surround sound shit in them. Is that like a feature your headphones have that you might have enabled?
I don't know for sure because it's These Astros are the $50 like the cheaper model.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a whole lot of settings. It's kind of like
are they plugged in via USB?
No, they're like a
analog
cable.
Okay,
yeah, like
good.
a headphone cable.
Okay, then it's okay. Because that means that they don't have like any like signal processing. They just take the analog signal from the PC. Sometimes you need to be careful with digital ones, so like USB, because they have like virtual surround. But what that does is it like starts mixing the left and right channel in order to make the sound stage feel wider. You know, so it feels less like headphones and more like you're having speakers around you. But that muddies like the locational information of sounds. It makes it very difficult to identify that. You don't have that excuse. You need to be able to hear that. Which again, if we go back to the thing earlier, I'm going to add one thing. So we have strafing, we have crosshair placement. We also have being able to hear when someone slams right next to you. This is also one of those things that unfortunately you don't really study. It's just a skill you need to develop. Okay. And the problem is with the things I've mentioned so far, with the strafing, with the crosshair placement, with being able to identify sounds, a big part of that is playtime, actually. Right? To where like if you know, some African tribes, you know, like they can probably hear a baboon fart from like 2 miles away. because that's what they've been grinding. You know, that's like their life basically. And if you play the game a lot, eventually, you know, you're
pick up on.
Exactly, you're going to become very, very sensitive to these sounds. You know, it's like when like a fly just buzzes past your ear, and you just immediately like twitch a little. You know, it's just an instinct, and you only develop that instinct over time.
Yeah, I think I was like tunneling on landing that dynamite over the shield, and I just didn't like. I just super hardcore tunneled over that.
Yeah,
and nothing else mattered.
Yeah,
no sounds mattered, no other visuals mattered until it was literally exploding on top of me, and then I just whipped around and coach gun.
Exactly, and that's why you need these skills to be second nature. It's why you need to reach a point where you don't actively have to think about them anymore. But this does bring us to another point, and that's positioning. So this entire time, you've positioned on the high ground. Okay.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
So I could shoot over the Rhine shield, or whatever shield they ended up having.
Okay. So I'm going to skip some pattern recognition stuff for you here. This is something that you might notice on your own with pattern recognition. In this particular situation, being on high ground is actually very bad. And again, we're going to skip the pattern recognition. What I'm about to tell you is stuff that you 100% would have figured out yourself if you had looked at enough gameplay. I'm just skipping some time. This kind of play is going to be successful when you are playing with a team comp that can ignore shields. So for example, when you are playing with a dive comp, you're more likely to find success in a position like this. And you're also more likely to find success in a position like this when you are mercy pocketed. Right. So if your team was dive, okay, if this wasn't an Ana but a Lucio or a Zen, if this wasn't a Ryan but a Winston, if this wasn't a Sigma but a Diva, and this Mercy was up here, this position would be very successful for two reasons. First of all, if you are up there, you aren't exactly surrounded by teammates. Like look at this Ana, for example.
He can't see me at all.
If the enemy Doomfist decides to dive this Ana, would he live very long?
No, he'd probably get destroyed.
He's going to get rocked, slapped, fire striked, stickied, lasered, everything, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas you, which one of these teammates can shoot him when he goes up there? No one.
No one.
Okay.
Not from where they are.
And
I'm kind of alone.
That makes you a very easy target. Now, if the Mercy was with you, then you might have been able to go for it. If you had a dive comp, then these people wouldn't be playing together. They would be more spread out, which means the Doomfist would have more targets to choose from. But right here, he has to choose between this fucking pentagon of destruction, or you up here. And the choice is very, very obvious to him. You know, he doesn't even hesitate. Okay. And the second reason has something to do with the Reinhardt shield. So the Reinhardt shield here is not a problem for you because you are on the high ground. But it's a problem for the rest of your team. Because the Ana also wants to land nades and land sleeps. The Sigma wants to be able to rock people. The Reinhardt eventually wants to be able to shatter people. But this way, with the way you position, if you had a dive comp, the shields wouldn't matter. Because your team can just dive past the shields. Yeah. But right here, you're basically reducing the likelihood that the enemy Ryan is going to lose his shield first. And in a Reinhardt...
one less person shooting it.
Exactly. In a Reinhardt... And the enemy team are relatively divey, right? So they don't necessarily need to win the shield battle. They have a Doomfist who can get value. They have a Diva who can get value. Okay? But you your team really benefits from it. And as a general rule of thumb, and again, this is something that you're going to that you would have recognized through pattern recognition, you are going to very quickly, within a week or two, going to recognize that whenever you are in a Ryan versus Ryan matchup, just from a statistical standpoint, when your shield lasts longer than the enemy Ryan's shield, your chances of winning just skyrocket. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm like, and from playing Ryan, honestly, that is starting to like click in my head when the enemy has like a Junkrat and a Hanzo blasting into my shield, and they just disintegrated before the enemy shields even cracked. I just have a bad time.
Exactly. So,
and that makes 100% more sense now. That since I'm not shooting the shield up here, I'm shooting past it. Winning the fight hinges on me to like a bunch of targets instead of just shooting a shield, where we could win by shooting the shield.
And it's all about pressure as well.
Yeah.
For example, very often people look at it, and let's say this Ashe just kills someone on your team.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people come to the conclusion that, oh, wow, this Ashe is a big problem. So they go out of their way, they take a position like this one, and they start focusing the Ashe, not realizing that the only reason the Ashe was able to get that pick and the only reason the Ashe can be so effective is not because she is the problem, but because she can do whatever she wants without being punished for it, because she has a shield in front of her. But the moment you take the shield away, the enemy team is going to be exposed to the full firepower of your team. And they're going to be under a lot of pressure. And what happens to human beings when they are under pressure?
They make mistakes.
They make mistakes. They crack. And that's what differentiates lower ranks between higher ranks. It's about how much pressure you can apply, right? Knowing the pain points, the painful spots where you can apply the most pressure. And it's also about how good you can withstand enemy pressure, how well you can manage your cooldowns to ensure that you can maintain a position for a very long time, how panicky you are with your abilities, how well you can gauge how aggressive you can play, right? A low elo tracer might take a few points of damage and immediately recall, throwing out that big cooldown and basically taking herself out for the rest of the team fight. But a high-level tracer, she might recognize that, hey, okay, I've taken some damage, but I can just blink to that health pick over there, right? So the same amount of pressure was applied, and one of those couldn't handle it and just immediately panicked and used a big cooldown, whereas the other one could withstand that pressure and kept their cool and realized what a measured response would look like. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what differentiates low elo from high elo players, being able to withstand that pressure. On top of, again, the fundamentals, things like situational awareness, hearing where the enemies are, being able to strafe side to side, having good cross replacement. Those are all basics that you just need to like build and develop. But generally speaking, they do not require any active thought from you. As tough as it is, those things almost entirely depend on your playtime. So if you can play a lot, then those things are going to get better. If you cannot play a lot, then they can't exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and so if those things were better, I would have reacted to the Doomfist who slammed.
Exactly, and that's the great thing, because sometimes...
And I wouldn't have had to coach gun. I could have just backed off the edge there, and he wouldn't have been it, because he engaged with 2 cooldowns.
Exactly.
So all he has left is punch.
Exactly.
All I do is drop down, and where's he going to do up there? Dive into our team?
Sometimes recognizing one pattern can start this cascade of positive effects. There are so many different things that could have prevented this Doomfist from being a threat to you, and even just finding one of them and fixing it can actually temporarily mask a lot of other issues. Okay, there's always multiple, and that's again why this pattern recognition thing is so nice, because it's not like a lot of people approach a VOD review as a quest to find what is wrong with me. This game, what did I do wrong that we lost it? And they look for that one thing. When in reality, there's like so many different things where if they fix it, it is just going to incidentally, without them even thinking about it, it's going to fix other issues that were present in their play. Okay? You know, you can either fix your situational awareness here, or you can fix your positioning, and then your situational awareness problem wouldn't have even become apparent. Because when you're with your team, whether you hear the Doomfist or not, all of a sudden becomes irrelevant. Okay?
So he has no choice but to dive on our whole team.
Exactly.
If I'm not all by myself.
Exactly. You wouldn't have even been exposed to that particular problem.
Yeah.
Okay, you need to give me like 1 second. I need to get something to drink. My throat is like, Jesus Christ.
That's fine. I'll grab something to do.
Okay, there we go. So, if we just look at this real quick, this is like a perfect example of how your front line just falls together.
What do you mean falls together?
Just I don't know. Do you say fall together? Like it
fall,
crumbles. It crumbles. Yeah, fall apart. Fall apart. Yeah, not fall. Yeah,
gotcha.
what the fuck? Yeah, fall apart is the English, right? Yes. Okay.
Gotcha.
This is what happens when your front line falls apart. Did you see that?
I think so. Their whole team is putting damage into our front line.
Yes.
And the Echo and me, both of our DPS, me and the Echo included, and our Mercy are way back here, just kind of recovering from the Doomfist jumping on us up there.
Exactly. So right now, the only people pressuring the enemy Ryan are a Ryan and a Sigma. And this Ana isn't really pressuring, she's just healing the Ryan, trying to heal him. Right? But your Ryan is getting swung at, is getting dynamited, doom-fisted. It's a lot of pressure. Okay?
Yeah.
And he cannot handle that pressure. There's no way, because this Ryan has significantly more resources put into him. Okay? So at this point, right, all it would take here is just like one headshot into the enemy Reinhardt, right? Because one thing you need to understand about health pools is, so tanks have armor, right? The orange portion of their health bar. Yeah. Do you know why they have armor?
It's for extra damage mitigation, right?
And why do they need extra damage mitigation?
Because they're the whole point of a lot of damage.
Exactly, and the reason why they take so much damage is twofold. First of all, because they are expected to stand all the way in the front. And second of all, because their hitboxes are massive.
Yeah.
And so they've given them a lot of HP, and on top of that, they've turned some of that HP into armor. Now the problem is that once they lose that armor, like right here, at this point, what are they left with? A big hitbox and standing all the way in the front.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not even that much health left.
And now it starts to snowball. Because he has lost his armor, he's going to take more damage. Because he takes more damage, his healers can't heal him anymore. He's going to take more damage than gets healed. Right? If he had armor, then his incoming damage would be much lower, So it would be much easier for the healers to heal it. But once he loses his armor, at this point it started like a chain reaction that cannot really be stopped. Okay? And the big problem is, one of the primary sources of damage for him was the enemy Reinhardt. Do you see what the enemy Ryan is doing? He doesn't even have his shield up. He just went for those swings.
Yeah, and then he backed off.
That's... Reinhardt is... Headshotting a Reinhardt is very easy compared to headshotting like an Ashe or a Moira or something.
Yeah.
You know? And that's where you come into play. Where you need to play with your team. And then when the enemy Ryan, you know, you're like chilling here, for example. And then you see the enemy Ryan going in, and right here, headshot. You know? Just keeping the damage in. And then right here, maybe you wouldn't have been able to save your Reinhardt, but you would have been able to kill the enemy Reinhardt.
And then it would have still been an even fight. It wouldn't have snowballed at that point.
Exactly. And then your front line would have a chance of actually... Because at this point, the floodgates have opened. Like, it's just fallen apart.
Right. Yeah.
And you gave the enemy team that opening. You've made yourself an isolated target on the high ground. You've taken up all of those resources from your healers, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then right here, you commit another cardinal sin. Why is this swap a throw?
Because I just threw away 70% of my ult.
Yes. And Overwatch
I just roll Bob.
Is not the type of game where you can throw away 70% of your ultimate and expect to get away with it.
Right.
Mm. Yeah.
My justification for it was I wanted the flashbang for the Doom, but yeah, 7. I don't think it would work. Looking back at it now, it wasn't worth 70% on my ult.
See, and that's the problem. Do you see how like everything is connected? Like your front line died, and like you couldn't have like all because you decided to stand up there.
Right.
You know, you wouldn't even have swapped to McCree had you not been up there, because the only reason you swapped is because you perceived the Doomfist to be a threat. But had you been with your team, maybe he would have jumped in and he would have just gotten one shot, and you were like, okay, easy.
Oh, he's scripted. Yeah, I wouldn't have. Yeah, I wouldn't have reacted at all to it.
Yeah, and it's not like
a little bit more comfortable on McCree though than I am Ashe. It was also a little bit of comfort.
See, and then again, look what you are doing. You are repeating the same mistake.
I am. I bought myself again. Off on the far left.
And now, see, this is where this is where the pattern recognition comes in. Mm-hmm. So you can already see this is the same shirt in a different color. You know,
it is.
You're
high ground, but I'm alone.
Exactly, you're alone, and look at your movement as well. It is. You know, Senpai Sichuan 2 Electric Boogaloo. Also, when you flashbang people, just right-click them if you can.
Gotcha. I just trying to be fancy, apparently.
Also, yeah, these mechanics are pretty rough, but see, I mean, you're basically just look at your positioning here. You're frontlining.
Yeah.
Hey, where's
just
the
me
rest
versus
of your
3.
team? Like, these people are fucking, I don't know, at work, and you're like, hello, I'm McCree.
Just over here fighting their whole, like, half their team. And I don't,
You killed my father, prepare to die.
I thought I was invincible because I got NO'd.
You are Montea.
Yeah, and then I just struggled so hard to beat her. Oh my god.
And this is again where pattern recognition comes in.
I'm not moving at all.
Because with enough pattern recognition, you're going to recognize the pattern that shooting a Valking Mercy is very rarely going to lead to results. And then you can use that pattern recognition to test the hypothesis of, hey, maybe I'm going to generate more value if I pretend the Valking Mercy doesn't exist. Which even at a high level is usually the way to go. A Valking Mercy simply is not a priority target because she is a good Valking Mercy. Like, either it's a bad Valking Mercy, but the only way you would be in a game with a bad Valking Mercy is if you are bad yourself, so you can't kill her.
Right.
Or if you are good enough to kill her, she's good enough to not get killed by you, if that makes sense.
She has more tools to avoid being killed.
Exactly. Like if the Mercy and the McCree are at the same skill level, or Mercy and the DPS are at the same skill level, the Mercy isn't going to die. Without like anyone else, or not like she's not going to die, but she just isn't going to be the easiest target. And yeah, I mean, Jesus fuck, what is there to say here? Like, I mean,
right behind them.
This is
yeah.
And again, pattern recognition.
Yeah, wow.
You know, this is.
Yeah, I'm just not with them.
Yeah, you are, and again, it's a pattern. On the first fight, you're not with them. On the second, you're not with them. So your entire positioning is the same mistake, just in different flavors.
Yeah.
So yeah, now you're like going on this weird goose chase.
I'm just trying to avoid the fucking filter.
Exactly, and that's not high value because ultimately is going to get you. So this is all just
yeah.
rough.
Yeah, that was rough.
High noon. Okay, free kill, I guess.
I was hoping they could turn while I did it and get something else, but they got one.
Yeah.
But
again, this is just, I feel like a broken record at this point.
It's the same thing, yeah. You know? I'm on this high ground, but I'm alone again.
And you're just standing
still.
still.
I'm just standing completely still, yeah.
It's literally, I could make a compilation of this, you know?
Yeah. I'm not moving at all.
Yeah, I mean...
And I drop. But...
Now you're in the action, actually shooting people, killing people.
And I think this is the first time I've been with my team.
Yeah, but at this point it's... right there again, movement was a little awkward, you were kind of out in the open.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the enemy Ashe used Bob after the Reinhardt shield has broken. Wow.
Yeah.
some real patterns being recognized.
I'm about to do it again.
Oh Jesus Christ! Oh no!
Oh
this is getting a little.
Yeah. Wow.
You just like you do look like. I hate using this term because like I can see how it's kind of offensive, but this is like Alzheimer's gameplay. You know, where like every once in a while you're just like, wait, where the fuck am I? Like, wait, what was I supposed to do? Right? And like again, like I'm sorry for the morbid analogy, but like it just
it makes sense though. No, it 100% makes sense though. It's just I don't even know what I'm doing.
And now we're just
I'm looking for a new spot apparently.
Just do it with your team.
What am I doing?
You know?
Yeah, it's
like just chill with your team. And again, we've just learned shields are important. If you can destroy that entire 1600 health shield barrier, that is 1600 damage your shield does your team does not have to deal before they get a clean shot on the enemies.
I can just literally use Noon to break his shield.
Exactly. If you get a kill with it, it's nice.
Cool.
But if you just break the entire shield, what is he supposed to do? You know?
Yeah.
And whenever you get kills, like right here with the high noon, if you look at this situation, look at the position the enemy Ryan is in.
He was gonna die anyway.
Exactly. So the problem with this ultimate is it didn't win you the team fight. It's not like, oh, I got kills with my ultimate, that's why we won. We won. That's why I got kills with my ultimate, because I could use them to clean up. And apparently that Moira is just blind.
Yeah.
I'm on fire.
Oh.
Okay, nice. More shots being fired into a Valking Mercy.
Yep.
And yeah, again, the positioning is like very bold. You do want to try to stay behind. Like, I mean, your Rhino is dead now, but you want to like imagine a line with your tanks, and you do not want to cross it. Exactly. Because this is just a bold...
I was in front of him before he died.
Yeah, that was a little courageous, I guess, is what I would call it.
Yeah, definitely I would.
See, like, this ultimate is fine. There we go. Bunch of shield damage, even got a pick. That was, and like, the great thing was 0 risk.
Yeah, I was behind the tank,
risk.
and here I go to feed again. Though.
Yeah, I mean, rolling into them is a little bit bold, but yeah.
Yeah. So stay back. Yeah, I'm just potatoing game. I thought my aim was decent, and it's not.
Surprisingly, it is not the primary issue, though. I would say your movement, your positioning is a bit convoluted. The hero swap was just like throwing away 70% of such a high impact ultimate is bold, to say the least. Yeah, you do want to also. There's so much stuff to talk about. Like, that's kind of the thing. We've been here for like 2 hours, and it's like there's so much to talk about, you know? But it's like, you know, we kind of just have to take it one step at a time.
Out of the things that we are seeing, what is... I should probably do them one at a time, obviously.
Yes, so first of all, as I mentioned earlier, some of these things are going to improve just by playing more. The main thing you should focus on is try to be more conscious of how you are positioning relative to your team, right? And do not hesitate, and these ultimately, like, it sounds like it's two things, but they go into hand in hand. On top of positioning in a more appropriate way for your team, also try to ask yourself whether shooting the shield might actually give you value. Again, if you're playing dive against a Reinhardt, his shield is irrelevant. You should try to avoid it as best as you can. But if your team stands to gain a lot out of the shield being broken, like in a Reinhardt versus Reinhardt matchup, then you shouldn't try to do whatever the heck you're trying to do here. You're trying too hard. The way you climb is not through going for hero plays all of the time, because when they do work, it's amazing and you feel like it's very good. But again, pattern recognition, because with pattern recognition, you're going to notice that, hey, these flanks, sometimes they work, but the majority of the time they don't work. So maybe this is just a little bit too high risk. And as you get better at the game, you also start recognizing patterns on when going for a flank is good and when it's bad. But when it's just your default play, I mean, every single team fight, you've just been behind the enemy team. And again, it's great, right? You got like 3 kills here, team fight is 1. But again, pattern recognition, because if you look at this... How many times did it fail? Exactly, how many times did it fail? There are so many times, dude, where, again, if we go back to the particle accelerator, where they are like, wow, this number is really interesting. I think we might have just found a sign of God or some shit. And then and then they like do the test again, and they're like, oh wait, never mind. You know, there was a 0 too much or something. It's like there's an interesting story. I watched a YouTube video about it recently where there was a local poll, right? And they did it electronically. They didn't do it with paper. They did it via computer. And they realized that one of the candidates had like 4,000 something votes, right? And they got a little bit confused, because ultimately that many people, there aren't that many people in the town. So how the heck could she get that many votes? And what ended up happening is that one of the bits, right? I don't know which one, 11th, 12th, whatever. The one that is responsible for like 4,096. A cosmic ray managed to flip that bit. So instead of like however many she got, 4,096 was added on top of that. Again, literally just a fucking particle from outer space, just flipping that bit like, bam, you're on now. And again, you know, the only reason they figured that out is because they checked and they were like, hey, is this really true, right? But if they just take it at face value, you know, they would be like, oh, okay, you know, apparently this woman is gonna be like our political leader now, you know. And again, a bit of a weird example, but that just goes to show that like whenever you always need to be skeptical of your own plays, you know, even if something works, you shouldn't just immediately assume that, hey, this works, this is the correct way to play the game, I need to do this more. And that's the problem, and that's why like a lot of people, they watch like my coaching sessions, right? Yeah. And one of the things they always point out is how careful I am with positive reinforcement. You know, they always tell me like, hey, you need to like tell them they're doing a good job and that sort of stuff. And the reason why I very rarely give out positive reinforcement is because it almost always gets misinterpreted. It's like when you're a girl and you tell a guy that like his shirt is nice, and he immediately starts thinking about, you know, his future with you. You know, you're just reading too much into it. It's kind of the same thing where like when a play is good and I compliment it, it's very easy for people to like, holy shit, this pro coach just said I did something good, and then they only do that for like the rest of their Overwatch career, and like it's not a good idea, you know. And you need to ensure that you don't fall into that trap yourself, where when something works, you always need to be skeptical and you always need to ask yourself, does this hold up to scrutiny? Can I do this repeatedly and see a pattern where it's going to work more often than not? Okay.
Yeah.
Now I would love to keep talking, but my throat is in another dimension. I swear to God, I can smell blood. So this would be a good time. No, I'm just kidding. Don't worry. It does hurt, but it's okay. Do we have any final questions sent by Setron?
I do not think so. I think I've got a lot to look at in my notes. I think I've got 4 pages of notes here.
My vocal cords, thank you.
Yeah, and I've got a lot that I can do with this, and I very much thank you.
Okay, perfect. Then I need to bless you with capitalism for just a second. There we go. I'm sorry, I need to do this. You know, I need to pay the bills. 2 things. The first one is the follow-up system, in case you are toying with the idea of maybe talking again in the future. The way it works is that whenever you purchase, not schedule, you can schedule it whenever, but just when you purchase a session, 7 days within another session, it's 40% cheaper. So if within the next 7 days you want to get a session, it's going to be 40% cheaper. And then you can hold on to it for however long you want until you actually want to schedule it. And then number 2 is the referral program, which technically Carb could take advantage of, but I don't think he actually has the time or wants it. Where if someone gets a session and they can confirm that they only got it because of your recommendation, then you get a session of equal value for free. But yeah. That's the capitalism stuff. If you have any questions, again, just so you know, right, you can always ask me questions. You can send me a replay code, 1 team fight a day, no problem. Even if you don't get a follow-up session, right? Some people, they got like 1 session in 2018 and I still talk to them today.
Yeah.
So make sure to take advantage of that.
Actually, I did think of 1 question.
Yes, go for it.
Not really super relevant, but I know you have your Discord. Do you guys run pugs in your Discord?
So I have talked with Carb about doing it. Right now we are running 1v1 tournaments. I'm pretty sure actually we have 1 going on right now. We are currently in the quarterfinals. Oh no, semifinals even. Okay. That is like our first attempt at kind of a community event. We wanted to see how it goes before we start going into pugs, but it's definitely on the horizon.
I gotcha.
Okay. Then
good.
I'm going to make myself some milk with honey. And also I'm going to go to sleep soon because it is 2:30 in the morning. So if you message me, there is a good chance I might already be sleeping. Right. So just so you know.
Yep. Get some rest.
Oh yeah, one last thing. Actually, wait, let me check. Man, it is so confusing. I don't know. Your appointment on my scheduling thingy is just, it just doesn't want to show up. Yeah. Yeah. I just needed to ask. Are you fine with this session being uploaded to YouTube, or do you want me to delete it?
I'm totally fine with you putting it on YouTube. Then I can actually refer to it then.
Very true.
Even though
Okay.
I had notes.
Well, thank you very much. Then I guess I wish you the best of luck. Have a good one.
Yep.
See ya.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.